In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. O Lord God, as loving Father, cover us with your mercy. Teach us the truth about the dignity and the beauty of who we are, created in your own image, and how we care for each other through our reverence of how you have created your own beauty in each of us. We ask all this in the name of Jesus the Lord. Amen. This is me. All right, can you all hear me? Is this thing on? Hello, can you hear me? Okay, welcome. Before I get started, I want to do a little exercise. How many of you here have cell phones with you right now? Okay. I want you to get your cell phones out. Okay. And I want you to put them on the table in front of you face up. All right. All there? Now I want you all to turn them over. Okay, good. Now, for the next 2 hours, that's where they're going to stay. I want your full attention. I don't want any distractions. All right, let me introduce myself. My name is Dr. Peter Kleponis. I'm a psychologist. I am Assistant Director of Comprehensive Counseling Services in West Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, which is a little town right outside of Philadelphia. So, yes, I'm an Eagles fan. And I'm strong enough to admit it. Okay. So, a little bit about myself. I've been in practice for 17 years. My training's in marriage and family therapy. But when I started working 17 years ago, I made two decisions. Number one, I wanted to work from a Catholic perspective. I wanted to bring the Catholic faith into my work. And number two, I wanted to work with men. I wanted to specialize in working with men and men's issues. Now, people ask me, well, why do you want to work with men? And I said, well, everywhere you go, you hear about women's issues. I said, what about the guys? We have issues too. So I've been doing that for the past 17 years, working with a lot of men and a lot of couples. All different issues. But what I discovered about 6 years ago, there was a big change in my clientele. I saw more men were coming to me who were struggling with pornography use. In fact, for the married men, it was actually their wives that were calling up and saying, help, my husband's into porn, what should I do? I saw this trend start to develop, so I decided, okay, I need to look into this. I need to study this, research this, get training in this, see what was going on. And what I discovered was that there is this huge epidemic going on in America that nobody's talking about. And it's an epidemic of pornography, and particularly pornography addiction. In fact, we now know, we actually have the neuroscience research that shows us that pornography is just as addictive as cocaine. All right? You may not believe it, but I'm going to show it to you, how it is. All right? So, but pornography today, it's the drug of choice. Okay? Now let me ask this question, okay? I want to take a poll, all right? I want you to raise your hand if you have never seen pornography ever. Never seen porn. Okay, we got a couple people here. Most of you have. It's everywhere in our culture, all right? It has infiltrated our culture. And why? For money. That's what it's all about. It's all about pornographers wanting to get your money. They want to get you addicted so that they can get your money. That's what it's all about. Now, why are so many people getting into pornography? Well, I tell people it's about the 5 A's of pornography. It's affordable, accessible, anonymous, accepted, and aggressive. Right? It's affordable. It's free. You got to go out. You got to pay for drugs and alcohol. Porn's free. It's accessible. It's easy. It's just a click away. And for many young people today, it's the cell phone where they're looking at it. And the iPad, and the iPod, and the Wii, the PlayStation, the Xbox, all these different places. It's anonymous. It's easy to hide. It's not like being drunk out in public. Porn use is easy to hide. It's acceptable. Today, among a lot of young people, it's acceptable to view pornography. A lot of teenagers and young adults, college students will openly talk about their porn use. No big deal. And number 5, it's aggressive. It will come into your life and it will take over and it will rule your life. So what I'm going to do here today, I'm going to talk to you about the dangers of pornography. I'm going to tell you what exactly is going on out there in the world. I'm going to talk about the addictiveness of pornography, how that works. We're going to talk about how pornography affects relationships, how it affects marriages and families, how it affects young people, young men, young women, and kids. And we're going to talk about how to protect yourselves. That's what it's all about. So let me get started. Now, in order to talk about pornography, the first thing we have to do is define it. What is it? And sometimes that can be hard. In fact, one former Supreme Court justice once said, when it comes to pornography, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. So in order to talk about it, we first have to come up with a definition. And I actually have two definitions that I use to define it. The first one is a clinical definition that I use in my practice, and the second one is actually from the Catechism of the Catholic Church. So let's look at the first one. In this definition, I say pornography is any image that leads a person to use another person for their own sexual pleasure. It is devoid of relationship, love, and intimacy, and it can be highly addictive. Now, based on this definition, does that image have to be of someone who was unclothed? No. Okay. The key word here, let me get up my little laser pointer here. I'm all high-tech today. The key word is use. Using another person for your own sexual pleasure. And that's what happens in pornography. For example, when a man is looking at pornography on the internet, he's looking at these women. He's not thinking that that's a person with thoughts and feelings. He's not thinking that that's somebody's daughter. He's certainly not thinking about the terrible circumstances that led her into the pornography industry. And they are terrible. I don't know of any healthy young woman who would say she wants to grow up to be a porn star. All he knows is that she is there for his sexual pleasure and he is going to use her. That's it. It's all about use. And of course, God didn't create any of his children to be used, to be turned into sex objects. So here, it's all about using. So when we think of pornography, it doesn't have to be someone who's unclothed. It could be a day at the beach, staring at the girls in the bikinis. It could be, the ads during a football game. It could be the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. Anything. It's all about using. And again, it's devoid of relationship. There is no relationship. There is no love. There is no intimacy in pornography. It's just people using each other. That's all there is. Now, the next definition actually comes from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and I have to read it because it's a bit long. It states, pornography consists in removing real or simulated sexual acts from the intimacy of the partners in order to display them deliberately to third parties. Right? There's no intimacy. It's just all about displaying it for others. It offends against chastity because it perverts the conjugal act, the intimate giving of spouses to each other. Right? There's none of that there. It does grave injury to the dignity of its participants, since each one becomes an object of base pleasure and illicit profit for others. Base pleasure. That's just basically getting a cheap thrill. And illicit profits. The profits are huge, and I'll talk to you about the money that they're making. It immerses all who are involved in the illusion of a fantasy world. That's all it is an illusion. It's not real. It is a grave offense. Civil authorities should prevent the production and distribution of pornographic materials. So this is a very comprehensive definition. Now, this was written over 20 years ago. If this definition were rewritten today, there would probably include something in here about the addictiveness of pornography. Like, that's what those say. All right, now that I bored you with that, let's talk about some statistics about pornography to let you know exactly what's going on out there. All right. Wait a second. All right, well, first of all, we're going to talk about, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. How does pornography enter our lives? It comes in many ways. Okay, first of all, television. Cable TV, satellite TV. There's a lot of pornography on there, particularly late at night. Obviously, through the computer with the internet. Right? Social media is used. How many of you here know what sexting is? Right. Okay, how many of you here don't know what sexting is? Raise your hand. Okay. I'll tell you what sexting is. True story. You have a guy and a girl they're dating. They're 14 years old. And the guy goes to his girlfriend and says, "Babe, you're so beautiful. You're so hot. You're like a porn star. why don't you take some nude pictures of yourself and email them to me? And she thinks, wow, this is great. He thinks I'm hot. So late at night, she goes into the bathroom, takes out her camera phone, and starts taking pictures of herself nude. And then she emails them to her boyfriend. All right? So, and he opens them up and he has these pictures. That is sexting. Of course, little does she know that as soon as he gets those pictures, he emails them to all of his buddies, and pretty soon those pictures are all over school. And what's she do? She tries to commit suicide. Luckily, she didn't succeed. But it's a true story. That is sexting. Right? And this is what's happening. A lot of young people today are using social media for the purpose of pornography. Much of it is their own amateur porn. They're making their own porn and they're sending these pictures out. There are a lot of young people that are setting up Facebook pages under false names so that they can post nude pictures of themselves. And they're out there trading pictures with other people. That's what's going on there. Chat rooms is another place that they're doing this with webcams. A lot of this is going on. You know, and what they don't realize is that this stuff, you know, once you put something out there on the internet, it stays there. You may delete it, you may think it's gone, but it's not. It's out there still, and people can retrieve it. Right? How many of you are familiar with Snapchat? Anybody? You take a picture, you email it to someone, they see it for 10 seconds, and it disappears. Well, guess what? Even though it disappears, it doesn't go away. Those pictures are going somewhere. Someone is collecting them, and you don't know where it's going to show up. So anything you put on the internet, even if it's deleted, it's still there somewhere. So this is where we're encountering it on social media. Video games. A lot of parents are worried about the violence in video games. Well, I got to tell you, they can be just as pornographic. I'm talking graphically sexual in the video games. Another thing that a lot of parents don't realize, and I don't want to give you guys any ideas here, but kids can actually view pornography through their video game systems. Through the Wii, the PlayStation, and the Xbox, they can access the internet and actually watch porn. I had one father, he found out how that happened when he got his Netflix bill. He thought his son was down in the basement with his buddies playing video games and they were watching porn. Right. Cell phones. That's a big thing now. All right. A lot of parents are getting their kids smartphones with internet access. That's what's happening with that. And that's where a lot of the sexting is going on. Print media, advertising. We see a lot of that in the ads we see in the print media. Popular music. Okay? Look at the music out there. Look at the lyrics. Look at the music videos. Okay, look at Miley Cyrus. All right? That's very pornographic. Okay? Granted, she's a train wreck, but you know, wrecking ball, yeah, that's she's a wreck. But it is very pornographic. And then, of course, clothing can be. So we see a lot of pornography coming in through many areas of our lives. All right? Why do we see so much porn out there? Anybody? Yep. Why do we see so much? Yeah. Well, because of all the pornography out there, yeah, they become more accustomed to it. But why do we see so much out there?
Because sex sells.
Exactly. Sex sells. It's all about the money. You know, today advertisers will not put any product out there unless they can add some type of sexual appeal to it. You know, everything today is sexy. You know, it's going to make you look good. It's going to make you more sexy. So this is what we have to be aware of. It's all about the money. And they want to get you. They want to get you hooked on that. Okay? So what is the damage of pornography? Pornography and masturbation. And I put those together because that's what always happens. Okay, first of all, it turns men in on themselves, damaging their ability to really give of themselves as fathers and husbands. It's a very selfish thing. It prevents men from being the leaders, providers, and protectors that God has called them to be. That's right, men. God has called you to be leaders, providers, and protectors. You can't do that if you're enslaved to anything. And pornography enslaves. Right? It damages male confidence. It harms the ability to see and respect the true beauty of women. The true beauty. Because the fact is, the women in pornography, they don't exist in real life. Right? First of all, most of them are very young. A lot of them are anorexic and bulimic. They've had multiple plastic surgeries, and thanks to digital enhancements and makeup, they don't exist in real life. They don't. But what happens is guys are looking at this and they're thinking, this is what beauty should be. This is the way women should look. And the reality is they don't. It's preventing them from being able to see true beauty. Now let's talk about the addictiveness of pornography. Let's talk about that. We now know that it is an addictive substance, just like anything else. They've actually done brain scans where they've taken the brain scan of a sex addict and compared it to the brain scan of a cocaine addict. And they found they're very similar. You have the same overstimulation of the pleasure center of the brain and the same damage to the impulse control center of the brain. It is the same. And we know that it is very addictive. Now let's talk about it. Anytime we talk about an addiction, you've got to look at it as two sides of a coin. On the one side of the coin, you have the physical addiction, where the body becomes physically dependent on the drug and needs it just to function. On the other side, you have the emotional addiction, where a person is using pornography to ease some type of emotional pain or some emotional conflict. We call that self-medicating. But they both work together to create the addiction. Now let me talk about the physical side of the addiction. Right. Okay. The first thing you have to understand is that men and women are wired differently. Guys, we're different. Men are wired to be visually stimulated. We see a good-looking girl walk by, we look. We get the whiplash thing. Okay, that's why I put that guy there with his eyes bugging out. All right. We are wired to be visually stimulated. There is actually a structure in our brains called the thalamus. And the thalamus has the ability to pick out erotic images. So we could be looking at 1,000 different things. If one of them's erotic, it's going to pick it out and say, hey, pay attention to this. This is important. Now, when this happens, there is a chemical reaction that occurs in our brains. A chemical called dopamine is released in large amounts. And this creates a high. It creates an excitement. All right? Now, a lot of men will tell me that whenever they look at a sexual image, it kind of gets burned into their brains and is up there for a while. Well, there's a chemical responsible for that in our brains. It's called norepinephrine. We call it the snapshot chemical. This is why a lot of guys, we don't need to be looking at pornography to masturbate. All we have to do is close our eyes and we've got a whole parade of images up there. That's what norepinephrine does. Now, norepinephrine also is responsible for a spike in testosterone, which is responsible for sexual aggression. And norepinephrine also activates the autonomic nervous system so that the heart starts beating faster, you start to breathe heavier. Some men may begin to sweat, right? All while looking at pornography. Now with this, a message is sent down the spinal cord to the genitals for sexual arousal, for an erection. Now with all of this going on, there is a tension that develops. There is a physical and an emotional tension that develops that can only be relieved with an orgasm. So the man masturbates. Now with the orgasm, opiate chemicals called endorphins are released into the brain, which provide a sense of euphoria, that really good, happy feeling. And when it's all over, there's an intense feeling of relaxation. So let's put it all together. We have excitement and stimulation plus arousal. Then there's the tension. We relieve it with the orgasm. That leads to euphoria and then relaxation. That is a very powerful drug. And the brain loves it, and the brain wants more. So the brain says, wow, every time we're happy, sad, lonely, angry, scared, bored, burnt out, frustrated, whatever, we're going to go back to this. Because this is the express train to pleasure. See, the largest sex organ in your body is right between your ears. It's right up here. Everything else is just a reaction to what's going on up here. But it's that reaction that reinforces what's going on up here and makes you want to go back for more. This is what is happening. Now, with any type of addiction, after a while, a tolerance develops. A little isn't enough. You need more of the drug to get the same effect. All right? So what happens is after a while, the soft porn doesn't do it for you anymore. That Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, that doesn't turn you on much anymore. This is where men go to the more hardcore forms of pornography. This is where pornography can get violent. You can get into fetishes, even child porn. All right? And he may also spend longer periods of time viewing pornography. So instead of looking at porn, say, 20 minutes a week, he's looking at it for 2 hours a day or more. And I've seen this happen. I've had men, I've worked with college students who've actually failed out of college because they spend all night online viewing pornography, and then they sleep through their classes the next day and they fail out. That is what's happening. So this is serious stuff. So as the tolerance develops, you want more and more. Right? Now, for some men, after a while, looking at this stuff isn't even enough. The tolerance develops to the point where they want to go out and they want to experience it live. So this is where men start going out to places like strip clubs and porn shops. And some men may even start going to prostitutes. Why? Because of the addiction. They need more and more and more. Now, along with the tolerance with any addiction, a dependence develops, where the body becomes so accustomed to operating at such a high level of chemical stimulation that they need to maintain it just to function. So it's no longer about getting the high, it's just about functioning. Right? And if they don't get a regular fix, there will be withdrawal symptoms. They'll experience depression, anxiety, insomnia, irritability, difficulty with concentration, headaches, stomach aches, all of that. Right? I've seen that. I had one man I was working with, and he was so addicted to pornography, he needed several fixes throughout the day. If he didn't get it, he wouldn't be able to concentrate, he wouldn't be able to do his work. So he knew that his company was monitoring their computer system, so he couldn't use that. So what he would do is every day at lunchtime, he'd go out to his car, pull out his cell phone, watch pornography, and masturbate. He had to get his fix. If he didn't, he wouldn't be able to concentrate. He wouldn't be able to do his work for the rest of the day. That's how serious it was. I was working with another high school student. He was a high school senior, became addicted to pornography, and I'd been working with him for about a month. He had been sober, not looking at porn, but he came in one day and he said, "Dr. Kleponis, I feel like I'm walking around with a constant hangover. What's going on here?" I said, "Yeah, you're feeling that. That's the withdrawal symptoms. Your brain is screaming for dopamine, and it's not getting it. And that's what's happening." In fact, it wasn't just withdrawal he was going through. Do you know what he was going through? What we would call that? Detox. His brain was detoxing from all the dopamine caused by the pornography. That's what was happening. Now, these withdrawal symptoms are there. They're not as serious as, say, the withdrawal symptoms from someone overcoming a cocaine or a heroin addiction, but they are there. And we do have to be aware of them. But this is the way the body becomes physically addicted to this stuff. It really can. It's amazing what visual stimulation can do to the brain. Now let's talk about the emotional side of the addiction. That's the other side of the coin. Now a lot of guys look at porn thinking, well, this is adult entertainment. It's what guys do. Everybody does it. It's on the internet. It's everywhere. What's the big deal? But what is it about the guy who has to keep going back over and over and over again and cannot stop? Usually there's some deep emotional pain that he's using the pornography to self-medicate. Right? Some deep wound, deep unmet emotional need. For a lot of these guys, they've been carrying this wound around all their lives. They don't even know it's there anymore. They've gotten so used to it. But it is there. And one day they discover pornography and how good it makes them feel. And there's a little part of them deep down inside that says, hey, this eases the pain. You know, let's keep going back to this. Let's go back over and over and over again. And you have to keep going back because the effects are temporary. But the more you keep going back to keep that pain at bay, the more chance you have to become emotionally dependent on it. And the more you keep going back at it, the more you have for that other side, the physical side of the addiction to kick in, to become physically addicted. And that's where they both work together. All right? So you have to be aware of it. Now, what are some of the common emotional wounds that can lead to a person to turn to pornography to self-medicate? Well, we have several here. The first one is selfishness. And that is a big problem in our culture. All right? Particularly among young people, there's an incredible sense of entitlement that I should be able to do whatever I want. If I want to look at porn, I should be able to look at it. You know, it's my business. That's a big problem. Family of origin wounds, what are they? Well, these are a lot of the deep wounds that people experience in their families. You know, growing up, maybe they grew up in a family where there was some type of abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. Maybe there was an early death of a parent. Maybe there was a divorce. Maybe there was some type of rejection, abandonment. These are all serious, deep wounds that a lot of people struggle with that they can turn to pornography for. I'll give you an example of this. And this is an extreme example, but I was working with a young man in his early 30s. He was married, had a couple of kids, and he was in the Army, and he was addicted to pornography. And it turns out that when he was growing up, his father was a violent alcoholic and very abusive. And when he was 11 years old, his mother had had enough, and she decided she was going to divorce her husband and leave, which she did. And you may think that's great. Well, she divorced him and she left, but she left their kids with their father. And this young man, he was 11 years old at the time, he spent the next 7 years just trying to protect his sisters from his father's rage. As soon as he was 18, he got out of there, joined the military, all right, but then became a sex addict. What happened there? Well, naturally, he experienced a lot. He experienced abuse in his life growing up, his father's addiction, the abandonment of his mother, the divorce of his parents. There was a lot there, okay? But as a kid, you try to take life one day at a time and make the best of it, and that was it. He just thought, well, that's life. He didn't realize, yeah, there was a lot of pain deep down inside, and he was using pornography to self-medicate, to deal with the pain. And see, what a lot of people don't realize is that often when a person becomes addicted to pornography, it has nothing to do with sex. Nothing at all. It's simply the drug that eases the pain. That's all it does. Some of the other types of wounds are loneliness. And again, it's not being lonely for a romantic or a sexual relationship. Just plain old loneliness. Right? Male insecurity, a poor body image, feeling no one would ever love you. Okay? Marital conflicts can lead to it. Excessive pressures in life. A weak spiritual life can lead to it. That leads to a deep loneliness. Perfectionism is one. Grief is another one. Interesting story about grief. I was working with a young college student, nice guy, but he was addicted to pornography, and he would always seem to fall into using pornography on Sunday afternoons. He'd be great all week long, except Sunday, that's when it would happen. So I thought, well, what's the importance of Sunday? Well, it turns out when he was growing up, he had a favorite aunt, his Aunt Sally. And every Sunday they would go to dinner at her house, and he loved it. He had a great time. But what he didn't realize is that his Aunt Sally struggled with mental illness, with severe depression. And when he was 16, his Aunt Sally committed suicide. Well, she committed suicide one day. A few days later, they had the funeral, they buried her, and they never talked about her ever since. He never got a chance to really grieve over the loss, to get through that. And every Sunday afternoon, there was that deep reminder. It was on the subconscious level. And there was that pain. So it's when he realized that, and we were able to help him to work through the pain of that loss, that he was able to recover from this addiction. So there are many things. Anger can lead to it. A mistrust of women and men. I've worked with men who are coming out of really bad breakups, whether it's with a girlfriend or a divorce or whatever, and their ability to trust women is shot. But they're still looking for love and intimacy. So they turn to pornography. A lack of a sense of fulfillment in life and a lack of sexual confidence. These are all of the deep wounds that can lead to the emotional side of the addiction. This is what we see. And what happens is these wounds lead to 5 faulty core beliefs. And this is what all addicts live by. And these beliefs are, number 1, I'm unworthy of being loved. Number 2, if people really knew me, they would reject me. Number 3, I can't trust anyone, even God, to meet my needs. So number 4, I need to find something that I can control that'll meet my needs. And therefore, number 5, pornography and sex is my greatest need and source of comfort. Right? Now, this is true for any addiction. We could take out pornography and sex from that last one, and we could put in alcohol, we could put in drugs, gambling, food, video games, shopping, you name it. We could put it in there. But what happens, they get wrapped up in this pornography addiction, which makes them feel lousy about themselves, and guess what? That goes back up to core belief number one. It feeds into that. And it's a vicious cycle. So this is what we find with this addiction. This is no different than any other addiction. Drugs, alcohol, gambling, food, shopping, video games, whatever. It's all the same. The substances are different, but the dynamics of the addiction are the same. It's all the same. All right. Let's talk about women in pornography, because women are getting into this too. It's not just for men anymore. They're becoming addicted. But it is different for women. It is much different for them. But let's talk about some statistics here. Women who keep their cyber activities a secret, 70%. Right. Women struggling with pornography addiction, 17%. Right now, when it comes to pornography addicts, 83% of them are men and 17% are women. So it's still mainly a men's issue, but it is growing for women. Right. And the ratio of women to men favoring chat rooms, 2 times. So we have to look at that. Now, here's some more. The percentage of visitors to adult websites who are women, 1 in 3. All right. So 1/3 of people who go to pornographic websites are women. The other 2/3 are men. Women who access adult websites each month, 9.4 million, and women to admit to accessing pornography at work, 13%. All right. That's a lot. So let's talk about women. Now, first of all, again, you have to realize that men and women are wired differently. Women are not visually stimulated like men are. A woman looks at pornography and she's like, what is the big deal? What does he get out of it? Okay. Women are relationally stimulated. They look for relationship. And this is where they prefer things like romance novels, soap operas, chick flicks, reality TV. Women are looking at relationships. That's what stimulates them. In fact, there was a study done recently where they showed the same pornographic video to a group of men and then to a group of women. And they asked them afterwards, what did you see? The men primarily saw body parts and sex acts. The women saw a relationship that was being expressed sexually. That's what's going on there. For the women, it's relationship. Okay. But because of this, what's happening is a lot of women are getting involved in things like chat rooms, where they can engage in a relationship. Right? Now, of course, in a chat room, you can be anybody you want to be. You can be a tall, blonde, voluptuous supermodel. But they get into these chat rooms and they get into these very sexual chats with men, strange men. And they develop these relationships, and this is what becomes addictive for them. Now, this is actually far more dangerous for women, because what we found is that women are actually more likely to want to go out and meet the men that they've met online, which could be very dangerous. Because a woman may think that she's going for some romantic rendezvous with the man she met online at a local hotel, when really she could be meeting up with a serial rapist or a murderer. These things have happened. Right? So even though more men get wrapped up in this addiction, for the women, it is more dangerous. So again, they become addicted to these romantic relationships. And it can lead to the obsession with chat rooms, texting, tweeting, social media, sexting, all of that. That's what they find. Okay. So whether you're a guy or a girl, you have to realize that this stuff is highly addictive. Highly addictive. It will come in, it will take over your life. No different than drugs and alcohol. And you have to protect yourself. Now let's talk about how this affects relationships. Now, someday, you're probably all going to want to get married, have a family. So let's talk about how this affects women. So, and I hope some of the mothers here can chime in and help me out with this. When a wife discovers her husband viewing pornography, how do you think she feels? Anybody? Betrayed, right. Anyone else? The mothers can chime in too. Anyone? Unsafe. Anything else? Unattractive, right. Right. All of those things can happen. Right? When a wife discovers her husband viewing pornography, for her, that is as serious as an extramarital affair. It's cheating, adultery. That's the way they view it. Now, a man looks at this and he says, well, these are just images on a computer screen. What's the big deal? But to a woman, those aren't images. Those are people, real people, other women. It is adultery. That's how serious they view it. And they feel deeply hurt and betrayed. Right? It makes them feel unattractive and sexually undesirable. Okay? How old do you think the women are in pornography? Anybody? They're not that young. Right. 18 to 25. That's the average age of a female porn star. Right? And thanks to all the plastic surgery they've had and all of the digital enhancements and makeup and everything, they don't exist in real life. Now you have a woman, she's maybe in her 30s, she's been married a few years, she's had a few kids. She's very beautiful, but she's not 18 anymore, and she certainly doesn't look like those women in porn. But she sees what her husband is viewing online, and she thinks to herself, he must think I'm ugly. My husband must think I'm the most ugly, unattractive person in the world. Okay? So what do they feel? Rejected. You know, here is this man they've married, the one person who has promised to love, honor, and cherish them for the rest of their lives, and now they're feeling rejected by them. That hurts very deeply. This is so damaging to a woman and to a marriage, I can't tell you. In fact, I believe that if every man in America knew how much pornography would hurt their wives, they wouldn't want to ever touch it ever. Ever. Okay? Because they think, how can I compete with these young women? Yeah. They're hurt very deeply. Right? They view their husbands as untrustworthy and weak role models for their kids. You know, if this woman, if she has sons, teenage sons like yourself, she's going to think, well, if my husband is looking at this stuff, is he going to let my sons look at it? Or even worse, if they have teenage daughters. She's going to think, well, if my husband is looking at these young girls online in this sexual way, is he going to look at my daughters that way? These are real thoughts that go through women's minds. I've worked with hundreds of couples. I know this happens. Right? Some women experience symptoms of severe trauma because of this. All right? Severe post-traumatic stress disorder. And it can lead to severe marital problems and even divorce. In fact, the American Association of Matrimonial Attorneys, also known as divorce lawyers, did a study on this. And they found that pornography plays a significant role in 56% of all divorces. Now, that was a study done back in 2004, 10 years ago. I'd say today that's probably much higher, a much higher statistic. So you have to realize how deeply pornography use can hurt marriages. All right. Okay. So what is the damage to marriage and family? Well, first of all, there's this delusional belief that fantasy is better than authentic love. Right? It leads to growth in selfishness, which is a major enemy to marital love and a severe harm to one's spouse. It leads to a failure to understand and appreciate the beauty and sacredness of marital love. Okay, it leads to a lack of refinement in self-giving, to romantic, friendship, and spousal love. It leads to diminished communication with one's spouse. Okay. It leads to sadness, anger, and a diminished ability to trust for the offended spouse. And that's a huge thing. When a wife discovers her husband using pornography, trust is broken. Her ability to trust him is totally shot. Now, she may be able to forgive him, but it can take months or years to regain that trust. It harms marital intimacy. And when I talk about intimacy, I don't mean sex. When I talk about intimacy, I mean that deep emotional connection between a husband and wife. It puts a wall in there. It increases loneliness and anger. It creates a distorted view of beauty, goodness, the human person, and sexuality. It increases vulnerability to adultery, and it can lead to separation and divorce. And ultimately, it weakens the spiritual life. There's no good that can come out of this for a marriage. None whatsoever. So men, someday, if you want to be married, you got to avoid this. All right? In fact, I got to tell you, if you want every woman to want to marry you, all you have to do is go around telling other women, I don't look at porn, I think it's totally harmful and disrespectful to women. I would never look at it. I tell you, all the girls are going to love you. They really are. You know what I'm talking about. All right. So, let me skip over that. Okay. So let's talk about the damage that pornography does to young men, young women, and children. All right. In order to do this, we have to talk about what are the messages that you're getting from pornography. Someone who's using pornography regularly, what are the messages? Well, for young men, it's very simple. Women are there solely for their sexual pleasure. Women don't need to be respected or valued. Women love sex all the time, especially the sex in pornography. And I'll tell you, the wilder and kinkier, the better. That's what women love. They beg for it. They can't get enough of it. That the sex portrayed in pornography is normal and healthy. And that sex and pornography should be a part of any relationship. And that's what a lot of people are buying into. How many of you are familiar with the third date rule? Anybody, the third date rule? A couple of you are. Among a lot of young people today, particularly high school and college students, there is this idea going around that if you're dating someone and you're not having sex by the third date, there's a problem. There's a problem with the relationship. And if they are having sex, they judge the quality of the relationship on the sex. So if the sex isn't good, well, maybe the relationship isn't good and you should break up. This is what people actually believe. And why are they believing it? Because of the pornography. This is what they're buying into. And of course, the media, television, movies, all reinforce that. They all do it. Okay? So this is what is happening with pornography. I got to tell you, guys, if you want to know about healthy sexuality and healthy relationships, don't go to the internet. Don't go to porn. You're not going to learn it there. Guarantee it. Okay? So what is the damage to men? Again, it leads to an involvement in the fantasy world that undermines their ability to communicate and relate to women in a healthy manner. Right? Do you think the men in porn are loving and respectful of the women that they're having sex with? No. They're just using them. That's all they're doing. Right? It interferes with the development of a healthy personality. Why? Because it fosters selfishness. That's what it is. It's all about selfishness. It harms your ability to understand and want to make a loving commitment in marriage, and that's true. There have been studies done with young men, mainly in college, and what they found among these men is that those who use pornography on a regular basis don't want to get married. They don't. They think that'll just tie them down to one woman and they'll be miserable. They actually believe that true happiness is going to come from having multiple sex partners throughout their lives. But I got to tell you, they are mistaken. All right? Because at the end of the day, they may have had a lot of sex, but they're going to end up very lonely. Very, very lonely. It fosters the hookup culture, the sexual utilitarian philosophy. Now, the sexual utilitarian philosophy is simply the idea that it's okay to use other people for your own sexual pleasure. And there are a lot of people that believe it. There are young adults out there who are creating relationships simply for the purpose of having sex. It's called friends with benefits. And they're buying into it. All right? And they think that this is where they're going to find happiness. Right? And they don't. It usually ends up where men are just using women. That's all it is. Right? But what's happening from this is actually it's caused a lot of women to become much more sexually aggressive. You know, they're the ones that are out there on the prowl trying to get men in bed. Why? Because they feel that's the only way they can compete. It's the only way they can have a relationship. Do women want to do that? Do they want to be that way? No, they don't. Right? They want a relationship. They don't want to hook up. They don't want a one-night stand. But they feel this is the only way. That's the way you get into a relationship, is by giving out sex. This is what they're believing. Right? And it results in sexual obesity. And by obesity, I mean it results in a life that is totally consumed by sex and the pursuit of it. That's the person's only goal. This is what pornography does to young men. Right. Now, you may not notice it where you are, but I guarantee someday if you're all going to college, you'll see it there, plain as day. Let's talk about the damage to young women. How is this hurting women? Well, the message they're getting is that in order to be loved, to be valued, to be desired by a man, one must look and act like a porn star. That's what they're believing. And they're buying into it. There are young women who are looking at themselves in the mirror and they're saying, wow, I'm hot, I'm gorgeous, I'm just like a porn star. This is great. They actually believe that. And then there are a lot of beautiful young women out there who don't look like porn stars, but because of that, they feel there's something wrong with them. Right? Right? How warped is that? This is what they're getting from it. They believe that sex and porn has to be a part of a relationship. Do they want it to be? No. But they think that that's the way you get a man, is through having sex and porn in it. They come to believe that the sex portrayed in pornography is normal and healthy. Right? Some girls are pressured into sexting because of this. Right? Not just with cell phones, but maybe they're pressured into making some type of amateur porn, which is put up on the internet. Right? They may be willing participants, but deep down inside, they don't want to do that. They don't. So what happens is that women end up just being sex toys. That's all. Sex toys for men. Now the APA, that's the American Psychological Association. According to the APA, the sexualization of women leads to girls and young women feeling bad about themselves. There is evidence that sexualization contributes to impaired academic performance and can contribute to body dissatisfaction, eating disorders, low self-esteem, depression, and even physical health problems in high school-age girls and young women. All right? So again, women are reduced to sex toys. That's all. And men are portrayed as predatory and masterful and never as gentle and considerate lovers. All right? Never. In fact, in most pornography, what you'll normally find are it's either one or more men who is really aggressively or violently using a woman in a sexual way. That's what's going on. It's not the wonderful, intimate, gentle exchange of love between a husband and wife in a healthy marriage. It's not. In fact, there's a wonderful researcher named Gail Dines, and she wrote a great book called Pornland, where she looked at the pornography epidemic from the perspective of the pornographers. She went to porn conventions, she interviewed porn stars and producers and directors and all this, and it's amazing what she found. And it's very dark in the porn industry, believe me. The porn industry is trying to portray these female porn stars as these wonderful, modern, liberated women who are using their bodies as they see fit. But it's actually killing them. But anyway, Gail Dines had a great quote in her book. She said, in pornography, men don't make love to women. Men make hate to women. That's what they're doing. We need to be aware of that, of what's going on. Okay. Again, the American Psychological Association makes the vital point that sexualization practices may function to keep girls in their place as objects of sexual attraction, significantly limiting their free thinking and movement in the culture. Right? That's what's going on there. Okay. Before we get on to kids, I want to talk a little more about the pornography. We talked about the addictiveness of pornography. And we talked about why this is all going on. It's all going on because of money. They want to get your money. Let me tell you a little bit about the money situation, all right? The pornography industry earns over $100 billion worldwide. $13 billion of that comes from the United States. They earn more than the top technology companies combined. So if you took all the money that's earned by Microsoft and Google and Amazon and eBay and Apple, put it all together, the porn industry still makes more money. More money. Okay. It is a huge moneymaker. Now you may wonder, how are they making so much money? Because there's a lot of free porn. There's a lot of free stuff out there on the internet. You don't have to buy it. Well, pornographers know that this stuff is addictive. And their goal is to get you addicted. So what they do is they give a lot of free porn. So you go onto a pornographic website, and they're going to give you several free screens. They're called teasers. You may get a few free pictures, a few minutes of free video, but eventually they want you to give them your credit card number. They want you to subscribe to the site. And once you subscribe to it, then you can get into the site and you can see everything it has to offer. Now, the subscription may not be a lot of money. It may only be $5 a month. But think of it this way. If a pornographer is able to get 50,000 men to subscribe to their website, which isn't hard, at $5 a piece, that's $250,000 a month. That's $3 million a year. And believe me, these pornographers aren't just hosting one website. They have multiple websites. These are major media companies. It's all about the money. And they know that if they can give you this free stuff, Eventually, you will get addicted, and then as soon as you turn 18 and you get that first credit card, you're going to want to go out and subscribe to these sites. You're going to want to buy it. Right? And most men who become addicted, they don't just subscribe to one site. They subscribe to multiple sites. I've worked with men who have spent thousands of dollars on pornography. And then as the addiction progresses, it's not just the porn, it's the money they're spending at the strip clubs and prostitutes and all those things. This is what happens. Right? So you have to be aware of it. It is all about the money. That's what it is. And you have to be aware of it. Okay? Let's talk about kids and pornography and what is happening there. All right. Today, the average age of when a child first encounters pornography is 11. That's what it is, 11. 80% of 15 to 17-year-olds have had multiple exposure to hardcore pornography. And the largest single population of internet pornography users are you guys, 12 to 17-year-olds. That's it. You know, it's not the dirty old man late at night in front of his computer while everyone else is asleep. It's teenagers. And the pornographers know it, and they want to get you addicted. That's what you have to be aware of. 89% of all solicitations of youth in chat rooms are of a sexual nature, and 29% of 7 to 17-year-olds would freely give out their addresses online. This is scary. It is scary. So what happens when a child, I'm talking someone under the age of 11, what happens when they encounter pornography? This is scary. First of all, it robs them of their innocence. It introduces them to a world that they're not able to understand. Okay? A 7 or 8-year-old, their brain has not developed to the point to where they can really understand what pornography is all about. They can't. So it leaves them with a distorted view of sexuality. It promotes the sexual utilitarian philosophy. It teaches boys that it's okay to use women. And it teaches girls that men are violent and cannot be trusted. Why? Because most of the men in pornography are violent toward women. And often children will imitate what they view in pornography. Here's where you hear stories every now and then of 10-year-old boys raping 7-year-old girls. That's what happens. In fact, I consider when a child is exposed to pornography, I consider that a form of sexual abuse. I do. Imagine this. You have a 7-year-old girl, and someone leaves her alone with a computer. And she plays with it, and she gets onto the internet, and somehow she logs into a pornographic website where she watches a pornographic video where a woman is being raped by half a dozen men. Okay? Now, an adult can look at that and say, well, that's just fantasy, that's not real. But a 7-year-old girl cannot distinguish between reality and fantasy. So for that 7-year-old girl, she has just witnessed a brutal, violent gang rape. Right? And children who have gone through this have actually themselves exhibited symptoms of being sexually abused, even though no one's ever touched them. The fact that they saw that, that's enough. And unfortunately, a lot of young children today are encountering pornography. We've got to protect them. We have to protect them from that. So, and let's talk about the damage to spiritual life. What's going on here? Because it does hurt our spiritual life. God didn't create us to use other people for our own sexual pleasure. That's not the way we were created. God didn't create anybody to simply become a sex object, a sex toy. Bishop Finn wrote, and I thought this is good, he paraphrased Pope John Paul II, he said, the problem with pornography is not that it reveals too much of the person exposed in the image, but it reveals too little of the person. The person in the image is reduced to sexual organs and sexual faculties and thereby depersonalized. Yeah. And it's true, when men look at pornography, they don't look at them as people. You know, they're not thinking about that. They're just toys, sex toys. Bishop Laverty wrote, and this, I love this, he says, this plague stalks the souls of men, women, and children, ravages the bonds of marriage, and victimizes the most innocent among us. It obscures and destroys people's ability to see one another as unique and beautiful expressions of God's creation, instead darkening their vision, causing them to view others as objects to be used and manipulated. Those who engage in such activity deprive themselves of sanctifying grace and destroy the life of Christ in their souls. That's what's happening. All right? So, let me talk a little bit about the pornography industry and what goes on in there. First of all, this is an industry that is killing women. Okay? Do you know how long, and on average, a female porn star lives? 37 years. Most female porn stars do not even make it to their 40th birthday. They're dead by then. Why? Because of the sexual abuse, the physical abuse, the addiction, the drug abuse, and the suicides. They don't make it. They don't. This is an industry that's killing women. Now you may wonder, well, how do these women get into pornography? Well, the pornographers prey on them. They look for very weak, vulnerable, wounded women. Now here's an example. You have a young girl. She's growing up in a home where there's a lot of abuse. Physical abuse, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse. So by the time she's 14, she's had enough. So she decides, I'm getting out of here. And so she runs away from home. And she ends up living on the streets. Now she has to find some way to support herself, so she turns to prostitution. Right? She becomes a hooker. And of course, the pornographers are out there looking for these young girls who are into prostitution because they know they're weak, they're very wounded, they're very hurt and very vulnerable. So the guy goes up and says, why don't you come back to my place? I'll give you something to eat, a place to stay. All you have to do is have sex with me and let me film you. And of course, this girl is desperate. And she thinks, well, anything's got to be better than where I am now, so she agrees to it. And that's how they get trapped into the porn industry. And through that, many of them become addicted to drugs and alcohol. Right? It is a deadly cycle that they're in. But of course, you don't hear about that in the media. You don't hear about that on the news. All right? Because in the porn industry, these women are stars. Well, I got to tell you, it isn't. So every time a man looks at pornography, he has to realize that he is contributing to the killing of innocent women. That's what's going on. And I got to tell you, I know there's only a couple girls out there, but my advice to young girls is that anytime you date a guy, you need to let him know that if he's into porn, forget it, you're not dating him. He's not worth it. Not worth it. All right? Because really, women want men who are going to respect them, and not just them, but all women. All women out there. We have to do that. Okay? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we get into that. Okay? So let's talk about how to protect ourselves, how to protect kids. And this is for you guys, and it's also for children. So here's your test question. What is the average age of when a kid first encounters internet pornography? When is that? 11, right. So what I do is I break kids up into two groups. Young children up to the age of 11, and then kids 11 and older. Now for the kids, the young ones up to the age of 11, we've got to protect them. They shouldn't know this stuff exists. They should know nothing about this. They should be totally protected from this. Now 11 and older, we've got to prepare them. We've got to educate you guys on this. Because you're going to encounter it. Most of you already have. You already have. And you need to know the truth about this so you can say no to it. And let people know you are not going to fall into that trap. So what can we do? And this is something I usually give to parents, but I want to give to you guys too. For the young kids, okay, for ages up to 10, limit screen time. That's computer, television, cell phone, iPod, iPad, tablet, all that, limited. I tell for young kids no more than 2 hours a day. Monitor all screen use, including emails and texts. And yes, 8-year-olds are texting today. Keep the computer in the public area of the home, and you never leave a child alone with the internet. Never. If you leave a young child alone with the internet, you might as well be leaving them alone with a perfect stranger, because you never know what they're going to get into. All right? Use a computer blocking service. That's a filtering service. You want to be able to filter out as much as you can. But even with that, it's easy to get around those filters. You still, anytime your kid's on the computer, you got to be standing right behind them. All right? So if any of you teenagers, if you're ever at home and you're babysitting and you've got young kids at home and they want to go online, you got to be right behind them all the time supervising. Okay? Place parental controls on cell phones, computers, iPads, all of that. All right? Monitor all print media that enters the home. Teach children modesty in dress and teach them to respect their bodies and other people's bodies. But I tell kids to say anything that's covered by a bathing suit, we just don't touch. Right? It's about respecting others. Know your children's friends, their parents, and what they're doing at their friends' houses. So many parents tell me, my little son Johnny, he's 8 years old, he was over at a friend's house and they were looking at porn. Right? You got to make sure the friends' parents are also vigilant about protecting them. And teach your child to come and talk to you if they ever see anybody who's not properly dressed, whether it's a picture, a video, or a real person. And if a kid ever does come to you and says that, you thank them very nicely and you very calmly ask them where they found that image, where they saw it. And then you go and make sure they never see it ever again. All right. We need to protect our young children. Now, for you guys, teenagers, all right, here's what I recommend, and you may not like some of this, but anyway, this is what we say. I tell parents, limit screen time. Again, computer, television, cell phone, iPod, iPad, tablet, all of that. What I recommend to parents is at a certain time at night, 9 o'clock, you gather up all the gadgets, you turn them off, and you lock them away. Okay? You do that. You need the downtime. All right? And in fact, not only is this going to protect you from pornography, but it's also going to help you in other ways. How many of you find it relaxing to kind of surf the web before you go to bed? Anybody? All right. It may seem like it's relaxing, but it really isn't relaxing you. It actually is overstimulating your brain. So even though you may go to sleep after surfing, you're not going to get as restful sleep as if you hadn't done that. If you really want to get a restful sleep, an hour or two before you go to bed, turn everything off. Give your brain a chance to calm down because it's been overstimulated all day long from all the technology. You got to give it a break. Right. Monitor all screen use, including emails and texts. All right. And this is important. Parents need to monitor all this. Email, text, Facebook, all of this. All computer use has to be monitored. Right? And I'll tell you in a little while why we need to do that. Okay? Keep the computer in the public area of the home and don't let anybody isolate themselves with the internet. So if a kid comes home and says, I'm going up to my room to do my homework, and they take their laptop with them and they close the door, can't happen. It all has to be done out in the open. And we need to monitor all social media. Facebook, MySpace, YouTube, all of that. All right. We need to put an accountability service on the computers. And what I recommend is a service called Covenant Eyes. And I actually have some flyers and postcards over there on this. Now, an accountability service is not a filter. It doesn't block anything. All right. What it does is you subscribe to it on the computer, the cell phone, the laptop, the iPad, whatever, and you put in a parent's email address. And then it monitors everything. And after that, if even the slightest questionable website is accessed, mom and dad get an email report. What website, what day, what time, and for how long. Right? Everything is monitored. Now, there's a reason for all this monitoring. Now, a lot of times when I talk about this with kids, they say, they complain because they say, oh, my parents, they don't trust me, they're violating my privacy, all of this. And I got to tell you, you guys aren't the problem. It's not you that your parents don't trust. It's the pornographers. The pornographers want to get you addicted. They will try every way possible to get into your lives. And the number one way they're doing it is through technology. Right? Now, you may think you're pretty savvy with technology. You know what it's all about and how to use it. But I got to tell you, the pornographers are 10 steps ahead of you. They are. And they're going to find every way. In fact, a lot of the technology we use came out of the porn industry. For example, streaming video, watching movies on your computer, that technology came out of the porn industry. Right? They're still now, even today, developing new forms of technology to get into your lives. This is why everything has to be monitored. And it's not just your computers, even for adults. I say everyone in the family, mom, dad, kids, everybody has to have their technology monitored. We have to keep the pornographers out. So that's why I recommend it. So yeah, I want your parents to be friends with you on Facebook. There are a lot of predators out there that want to friend you. Right? They will try all kinds of sneaky ways to get in. So don't think you can handle it on your own. So whatever you're using online, your parents need to be a part of it. Okay? That is why we need to have it all monitored. Okay? We need to teach teens that pornography is a highly addictive substance similar to drugs and alcohol, and that's what I'm doing here today. Again, pornography, it's not about sex. It's a drug. It's an addictive substance. We got to stay away from it, all of it. And we need to teach you guys about healthy sexuality and healthy relationships. Now, this is a job for your parents and your teachers, youth leaders, all of that. Because unfortunately today, kids aren't learning about healthy sexuality and healthy relationships. And when they don't know it, where are they going to go for answers? The internet. And I guarantee you, you're going to get the wrong answers. Totally the wrong answers about that. Okay. We need to teach teenagers to respect their bodies and other people's bodies. Insist on modesty in dress. Okay. Know your teens' friends, their parents, and what they're doing at their friends' houses. Now, I know that's impossible, but I always tell parents, you need to know who your kids are hanging out with to make sure they're hanging out with a good crowd. You don't want them getting into a bad crowd, and that's easy. Okay? So, one of the things that I didn't add on here that I want to add to it is we need to teach virtue. All right? That is an important thing in life, is teaching virtue. Now, what is virtue? Well, it's simple. How many of you guys here are Boy Scouts? All right, here's your test for the day. Recite for me the Scout Law. Right, give that man a merit badge. The rest of you, I want you to turn in all your merit badges. You're tenderfoot now, you've been demoted. Okay, a scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Those are virtues. That's what it's all about. All right? In fact, someone once said that parents don't raise children, they raise adults. That's the goal, for you to become mature, responsible, virtuous adults. Right? This is what it's about. That's got to be your goal. Okay? And I'll tell you, I'm talking to the guys here, if you are trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent, every girl out there is going to want to date you. Right? Because there are too many guys out there that are just out to use and abuse women. Too many of them out there. Right? This is the goal. This is what you're striving for. And even women need to strive to be virtuous women, too. They do. Unfortunately, the pornography industry has led women to become very sexually aggressive, almost like men. Right? One woman was telling me that her son came up to her and said that his girlfriend actually sent him a nude picture of herself. He didn't even ask for it. She just sent it to him. All right? Being sexually, he finally broke up with this girl because she was just too way aggressive. And the fact is that most men, they don't want overly aggressive women like that. They want a virtuous woman. That's what they're looking for. So we have to focus on that in our lives. And here's where parents need to help them grow into that. Okay. So now, what are some warning signs that a teenager might be struggling with an addiction to this? Okay. Well, obviously, discovering pornography on their computer, their cell phone, iPad, tablet, iPod, whatever. That's a warning sign. If a teenager is isolating himself with the computer, the cell phone, or so forth. All right. If there's a sudden drop in grades. If they're dropping out of extracurricular activities. If they're no longer interested in spending time with family or friends. Right? If there's a change in their mood, they become angry, sullen, moody, depressed, or anxious. Or if they start to disrespect family rules. Those are warning signs that there could be a problem with pornography. All right? So many parents are worried about drugs and alcohol. Well, I got to tell you, it's not the drugs and alcohol today, it's the pornography. Right? Like I said, the 5 A's: affordable, accessible, anonymous, accepted, and aggressive. Right? So what do we do for a person who is struggling with pornography addiction? All right, I just want to briefly discuss here. This is the Integrity Restored Recovery Program. And I want to talk about the 7 points to it. And I call these 7 points and not 7 steps because they're all of equal importance and you do them all at the same time. So let me go through it. The first point here is self-knowledge and commitment. Self-knowledge means you admit you have the problem. There's no denial. You take full responsibility for it, for the addiction, for your behaviors, for the consequences of your behavior, and you take full responsibility for your recovery. And you're willing to do whatever it takes to recover. Total commitment. Self-knowledge also means knowing what your weaknesses are. So it's identifying what are the triggers, what are the things that trigger a person into using pornography. And we also identify their danger zones. Now, a danger zone is a time, a place, or a situation where they're more likely to be triggered. So for a teenager, it could be late at night when they're alone in their room with the computer. That's a danger zone. So we identify the triggers and the danger zones, and we develop the strategies to help avoid them. I call them battle plans. You need your battle plan. As the old saying goes, people don't fail to plan, they plan to fail, they fail to plan. That's what it's about. Right? The next point up there is purifying your life. And that starts with getting rid of all pornography, getting rid of all access to that, making sure all your technology is monitored. It also means changing the way you view pornography and the way you view women, realizing that women are not there just to be used and abused, right? That we need to protect them. We need to protect ourselves, protect our eyes, and protect women out there. That's about purifying your life. It's purifying your heart and mind as well as your technology. The next point is support and accountability. You can't do it alone. You need to surround yourself with other guys who understand the problem and are going to be there to support you and keep you accountable. All right? They're going to make sure you stick with the program. The next point is counseling, and that's getting to the root cause of it. Figuring out, what are those deep wounds that have led you into pornography and keep you going back. And once we identify them, then we're able to heal them. And then it's so much easier to avoid pornography. The next point is a spiritual plan. You need God. You need God in your life. You need to be walking with the Lord daily. Now, it doesn't mean this is something we're just going to pray away. But you need to know how much God loves you, how He delights in you, how, there's nothing that could ever take His love away from you. So many people who struggle with addiction think that God can never love them. You need to learn that God loves you no matter what, and He's going to be there to help you. Now, granted, we do sin, and when we sin, that separates us from God, and that's why we need confession. But the love is always there, and the help is always there. The next point is education. All right, you need to educate yourself on the dangers of this. This is why we're here. You need to educate yourself on the dangers of pornography, what it does to people, what it does to relationships, the damage it causes, the recovery process. Education also means learning about healthy sexuality and healthy relationships. This is where I like John Paul II's Theology of the Body and Love and Responsibility, 2 excellent documents. Very good. And the center point that holds it all together, like I said before, virtue. That's what it is. What are the virtues that we need for a healthy recovery? Well, we need humility. We need honesty, patience, perseverance. That's what we need. So this is the process. When someone comes to me and they're struggling with pornography and we determine that there's an addiction, this is the plan. That's the roadmap. Okay. So now you can learn more about that from my website, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. So I have a couple of things here that I want to share with you. First of all, I have a book over here that I recommend everybody read, even teenagers. It's only 95 pages. It's a short read. It's easy. It's called The Pornography Epidemic, A Catholic Approach. Only $10. I recommend everybody get it and read this. I also have a DVD over there. It's called Unfiltered. This is a parent workshop kit. All right? This is for parents and teenagers. It's called Equipping Parents for an Ongoing Conversation About Internet Pornography. Okay, I'm in it. I'm the star. Okay, there's a couple other people in it. So there's Matt Fred. He speaks to young people about chastity. He's like 30 years old. He's from Australia. He's got that accent. He's a surfer. I'm not. All right. And Damon Owens, he's the director of the Theology of the Body Institute. Okay. But what you get in here is a great DVD. You get a DVD workshop guide and a parent how-to guide. Okay. I got 3 more copies left over there, so it's first come, first serve. If you can't get it tonight, you can go to my website and you can order a copy. I also have flyers over there for Covenant Eyes. This is the accountability and filtering service. I highly recommend this. I've looked at a lot of different filtering services. I know there's Net Nanny out there. There's X3 Pure. There's canine out there. This, I think, is the best. Right? That's why I'm promoting this. Okay. But what I want you to take away from this is, number one, realizing that pornography is addictive. It is addictive. The pornographers want to get you addicted. Why? They want your money. They want you to be a customer for life. Pornography is not going to help you in relationships. It's not where you're going to learn about healthy relationships or sexuality. You're certainly not going to learn how to communicate and relate to women in a healthy way. You're not going to learn how to respect them. Right? It's only going to lead to a lot of pain and misery for everybody involved. All right? So we have to learn this. And this, I know I'm kind of focusing on the guys here, but I want the girls to also hear all this too. And I said the girls, if you're dating a guy, you need to come out right front and say, listen, if you're doing porn, forget it. We're done. We're over with. I don't want anything to do with you. And don't think if you do that, you'll never find a guy, because there are a lot of good guys out there who don't look at porn. All right? So this is it. Now, people come to me and they say, well, Dr. Kleponis, we see all this pornography and everything that's going on in our culture and how bad it is. Do you see any hope in sight? And I say, yeah, I see some hope in sight. I do. But I think it's going to take about 50 years. And they say, why 50 years? Well, I compare pornography to tobacco use. 50 years ago, doctors knew tobacco would kill you. They knew tobacco, smoking cigarettes would give you cancer and heart disease and lung disease and emphysema and all these bad things. But no one could really say anything about it. It was politically incorrect. Everybody was smoking. It was everybody's right to smoke, and everybody was smoking. We were smoking in restaurants and office buildings and airplanes, and Lucy and Ricky were smoking on TV. It was everywhere. It took 50 years of intensive education and, unfortunately, a lot of people dying before we finally got the message. All right? And we realized, how many of you guys in here smoke? Any of the teenagers smoke in here? They're right. You probably would never even consider it because you know how dangerous it is. Well, this is what's going to happen with pornography. We're going to have to really educate people on this. It's going to take a lot of education, and unfortunately, it's going to take a lot of people having their lives ruined because of this. I've seen marriages break up, families break up. I've seen men lose their jobs. A lot of this because of pornography. So the key here for all of you is education, educating yourself on this, and being able to say no to it.
I am a high school math teacher. I'm also a lacrosse coach. I'm the JV coach at Bow High School, where I play. I know there's some Goffstown players. We'll see you guys later this season. And I am married. So before you start thinking that, okay, here's another talk from another married guy to the teens about dating and relationships, well, before you get too excited about that, I've only been married less than a year. Okay, I got married here in St. Marie's last April. So that means I was dating less than a year ago. So it's not that I'm so far removed. I think that's kind of one of the other reasons why I was asked to talk tonight. So what I'm really going to talk about is a healthy relationship, a Catholic healthy relationship in which you can really uphold the dignity of each other, not just of the woman you're dating. And I wanted to talk about what it meant to be a man or woman of God, and just not be afraid to go against the culture. I think that we fight this cultural norms all the time. It's acceptable. What is acceptable in our culture, and we have to fight that. And I wanted to share a scripture with you, and this particular scripture kind of formed my view on relationships, and so much so that I wanted to make sure that it was one of the readings at our wedding, because I wanted to make sure that at that moment when I said yes and I was married, that I was reminded right before I said yes exactly what God was calling me to be as a husband. And so I want to share that with you. I have it just copied here. So this comes from Ephesians, it's chapter 5, and it's verses 21 through 33. Be subject to one another out of reverence for Christ. Wives should be subject to their husbands as to the Lord, since as Christ is head of the church and saves the whole body, so is a husband the head of the wife. And as the church is subject to Christ, so should wives be to their husbands in everything. Now, before you get too excited, guys, I hate to break it to you. They're actually getting out easy on this one. And this is not talking about dictatorship. Okay, subordination does not mean dictatorship in any means. And this might seem outdated and even a little bit sexist, but the fact is that that what is said next kind of puts that all into context. Verse 25, husbands should love their wives just as Christ loved the church and sacrificed himself for her, to make her holy by washing her in cleansing water in the form of words, so that when he took the church to himself, she would be glorious, with no speck or wrinkle or anything like that, but holy and faultless. In the same way, husbands must love their wives as they love their own bodies. For a man who loves his wife is for him to love himself. A man never hates his own body, but he feeds it and looks after it. And that is the way Christ treats the church, because we are parts of his body. This is why a man leaves his father and mother and becomes attached to his wife, and the two become one flesh. This mystery has great significance, but I am applying it to Christ and the church. To sum it up, you also, each one of you, must love his wife as he loves himself, and let every wife respect her husband. What it means to be a man of God is to learn to die. Husbands should love their wives just as Christ loved the church and sacrificed himself for her. We are called as men to love and to imitate the most perfect love, that is Jesus. Wives will submit and respect their husbands only if they are leaders. We heard that earlier. Men are called to be leaders. Leaders like Jesus. If you want respect, just act like Jesus. And I'm sure that any woman will respect that. Right? If you're leading like Jesus, you will have no trouble finding a girlfriend. Right? If that's the example that you're trying to be, you won't have any trouble with that. So, laying down your life for your spouse. Now, we're going to be clear about that. Laying down your life looks like a lot of things. Laying down your life does not necessarily mean, if you're getting mugged and somebody's got a gun, that you step in front of your wife. I think if that happens, I think you'll know what to do. You're gonna stand in front and take the confrontation head on. But I think that that learning to sacrifice is all about giving of self. It's all about that givingness. And that can look like many different things. It can look like a lot of the small sacrifices that come in everyday life. One of the things that you could do to start preparing for any relationship is to practice this. Maybe it can look like just asking, how was your day? And putting away the distractions and actually giving of your time and attention and your energy. That is something that is more important, that we really hold tightly onto, is our time and our energy. Those are more valuable. That's why we get paid to do things, is because we're giving of our time and our energy. If you want to show someone that you really care about them, spend time and energy with them. Do things like doing the dishes, taking out the trash, complimenting her. Tell her that you look good today. You look beautiful today. Thank you for doing this. Really showing gratitude. I think that chivalry has kind of got a bad rap. We live in a culture that is pro-feminist and pro-feminism, and I'm all about that. Like, girls, you rock. But there's something to be said about, not letting her have to pull out her chair or get into a chair, or open a car door. Or instead of, having them have to say that, porn is off of the table, they don't have to say that because you already have, right? You don't have to say, now it's not first date, you don't go on the first date, oh, by the way, no, you don't want to scare them, Give it a few dates, but make sure that they know that you're a man of virtue and that that sex is off the table. I was afraid when getting into new relationships when I was your age, because I thought it was going to be a hindrance on my relationship to say that stuff was off the table. And in fact, that wasn't the case at all. A lot of women that I've dated were really, really thankful and grateful that I was the one who said, that's off the table. That's not how I do it. That's not how I work within a relationship. That's not something that's going to happen. So, what if you're not in a relationship? Well, even if you're considering a religious life, if you're going to become a religious, there's actually even more leadership involved in that. Well, probably equal leadership, I think I would say. Right? You have to lead like Jesus for a whole community, your church and your parish, or your order. Same thing with female religious. You need to be subordinate to the person that you marry, which is Christ. But we don't just learn to die overnight. We don't learn how to be selfless overnight. We need to practice this. And so even if you're not in a relationship, even if you're not at the point where you're off and doing your religious studies, you can practice this. And I bet all of you have the perfect person to practice on. You ready for this? How about you try your moms? Right? Here's something that you can really be thankful for. How many people actually thank their moms for all that they do? Do you realize how much they do for you? It is ridiculous how much they do for you. How about this? Raise your hand if you've cleaned your own toilet bowl. Oh, actually, quite a few of you. I didn't do that until, yeah. But how many moms in here actually do the cleaning of the bathroom? All right. That's great, because I got to college and I didn't realize that for the first 18 years of my life, my mom cleaned the bathroom, and that is not a nice job to do. So I had to go back after, I went to my first apartment and said, thank you for all that you did. I didn't recognize that. When was the last time you complimented your mom? You look nice today. Mom, you've been really working out. I see that. Great job. Thank you for the healthy meals to make sure that our family is healthy. Appreciate your mom. So that's nice, but unfortunately, not everybody has the mother figure at home to work with, and that's okay too, because there are women that you can practice on that are not your mom, you're not dating. In fact, it's good if you just practice this on all women. I'll give you an example. The other day I was at the laundromat, and I was washing my clothes, and there was an elderly woman there also washing her clothes. And when she got done folding her laundry, I walked straight up to her and I said, hey, can I help you bring that to your car? That's the kind of selfish love that you got to have. And that's the kind of selfish love that's going to get you married. Okay? And I don't say that to brag and to toot my own horn. I say that because that's what Ephesians is talking about. I'm giving up my time and my energy. And we need these examples. Okay? And I think that it's great that there are a couple of girls here. And I know that we're both focusing mainly on the guys tonight. But what's really great is there's a level of accountability now. When I heard that I was only talking to the men, I was kind of bummed out. Because the girls should hear this. Because you know what? They're going to say, I'm worth dying for. Peace out. Right? See you later. In fact, we can just why don't you take out those phones right now if you're dating somebody who's treating you like a jerk and he's not treating you right. And you just say, I'm worth dying for, ... peace out. All right? Seriously. If they're not treating you well, you need to get out. And there's a level now. The bar has been set. The bar is Jesus. And now we're not all going to get there because we're not perfect, right? But we're going to strive and get as close to that as we possibly can. Love that is so selfless, that you will give up your life, your time, and your energy to others. Love is selfless. God is calling men to be leaders. He's calling leaders to protect women. We need to protect their dignity. We need more men that are willing to stand up against the culture. And we need examples of godly men that are not afraid to be those examples. Men who can say that they have fought the battle and that they have won. We need the success stories. We need to let others who are fighting the battle know that it is possible to win. I challenge all the guys in this room to learn to die. I challenge you to be leaders. I challenge you to be examples to your friends that are not here tonight. Are you ready to fight the fight, protect women's dignity, and learn to die? Husbands should love their wives, just as Christ loved the church and sacrificed himself for her, to make her holy by the washing her in cleaning water with the form of words, so that when he took the church to himself, she would be glorious, without no speck or wrinkle, or anything like that, but holy and faultless. Sacrifice. Learn to die. Thank you.
By the way, as far as dating goes, guys, I want to tell you, let me ask this question to the ladies. Ladies, if you're going to date some man, and you want to see if he's going to treat you well with respect, what do you look at? How he treats his mother, right. That's what girls are looking at. If they're with a man and they see he is not treating his mother with respect, they're not going to give you the time of day. All right, so remember it. With your moms, you're practicing for future. Okay. All right, well, thank you very much. Does Karen want to come up and...
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I know it's a snowy night, and it's a Saturday night, but thank you. We appreciate it, and we thank Dr. Kleponis for sharing his expertise and his advice, and we know that it's armed us, it's giving us the tools to go out and be the men and women of God that we're called to be. So thank you very much. Have a safe trip home, and enjoy your Sunday.